Hello and welcome to the Bhagavatam. You might have noticed that we all like to expand. We like to have more of everything, more knowledge, more money, more friends, more travel, more food, more interesting things to do, more excitement, more pleasure. We like to expand. But this instinct to expand comes from our source, that is God, because He is constantly expanding. And today we're going to talk about some of those expansions. First, let's begin with Radha. Radha is not an expansion as such. She is the soul of Krishna. So who is Radha? You might have seen pictures earlier. And Radha is his everything, his beloved, his partner, eternal soul love, if you want to use that term, which you're also fond of and so used to. She is his soulmate, the eternal soulmate. She is no different than he is. She is him and he is her. She is just the feminine aspect of him and he is the masculine aspect of her. So from Radha, the feminine, come the gopis, the cowherd girls of Vrindavan. From her comes Yogamaya, who assists in the pastimes of Krishna and Radha. From her come the queens of Dwarka, the wives of Krishna, Lakshmi, Parvati even. All the divine aspects of the feminine originate from Radha. And as you've seen in their Leela, there are so many wonderful aspects of Radha. She is the queen of Vrindavan, but at the same time, she is the most dear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Here he is putting flowers in her hair, combing her hair with so much tenderness and love. So as you'll see, this is the original, the divine couple. And they are completely surrendered to each other. Their love is not anything like the love of this world. It is not, there's no exploitation, there is no selfishness, there is no manipulation, none of that. It's just absolute, pure, divine love. So, this aspect of Krishna that we see in this pastime with Radha, that is his original form. The form of Krishna as he appears in Vrindavan as a cowherd boy is known as his Swayam Rupa, his original form. This is the original form of the divine. This is in his childhood pastimes with his mother. And then as he grows up, playing his flute. So this flute-playing cowherd boy is that supreme Godhead, the source of all creation, as he describes in the Bhagavad Gita. Supreme source of all material and spiritual worlds. And as he says, everything emanates from me. The wise, knowing this, worship me with their heart. Now this very Krishna expands into multiple forms and ultimately into this material universe and into the billions of souls that are here. But the mistake we all make is we think that because we expand from him, we are him, and we're not. But it's very tempting to think that. We are particles of the divine. We are tiny little infinitesimal atomic particles of God. He is the original. Now that original Krishna also expands into other forms that are equally powerful as himself. And this is referred to as the Prabhav Prakash. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper in here for you. Right. So this Prabhav Prakash that we're talking about here is when Krishna becomes many of himself, like in the Rasa Leela dance. Right? There is the original Krishna, and then he can also become many. We also heard about how he married 16,108 queens, and then he was with each of them at the same time. In other words, he would expand into 16,108 Krishnas and be with each of them simultaneously. And with each of them, he'd be doing different things. It's not like he was doing the same thing. It wasn't a clone. It was that many more forms of him. And then in the morning, all those forms would come together and merge into one. And then he'd go into the place where he held court, and he met with he did the affairs of the state as a king. So this is the Prabhav Prakash. And then we have what is called the Vaibhav Prakash. Now, why am I going into all this? You might wonder. Because there's something very important to learn here. Krishna expands into many forms who look the same as himself. But between them, there is no difference in their strength and power. So this Vaibhav Prakash is Balaram. Balaram is the first and direct expansion of Krishna. And he is, again, has the same power, the same strength, the same opulence as Krishna himself, except Krishna is the original. Balaram appears to look different from Krishna. He appears in a mood and complexion that are different from that of Krishna. While Krishna has a dark complexion, Balaram's complexion is compared to Krishna is that of a white spring cloud. But Balaram has many names: Baladev, Balabhadra, the strong one, Haladhar, who holds the plow. So the earlier forms we talked about, they look, Krishna with the gopis, Krishna with his wives, they look the same as Krishna. But in this case, in the case of Balaram, he looks different, and he has his own characteristics and qualities, okay? But he has the same power and opulence and strength as Krishna. Now, Balaram manifests the mood of service to Krishna, and he shows what that service is like. Balaram assists Krishna in Krishna's pastimes in both the spiritual and material realms. In the earlier times called Treta Yuga, he appeared as Laxmana. Well, this is during the time when he was in Vrindavan, he appeared as Balaram. But in the earlier time, he appeared as Laxmana along with Ram. And then appeared with Chaitanya as Nityananda, who you see in wearing the blue dhoti on the left side. Now, this same Balaram manifests in the material world, right, as Vishnu, Mahavishnu, Karnodakshayi Vishnu. And he expands from here to form not only Mahavishnu, with whose breathing the entire creation manifests and then is destroyed, but then he expands into Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. This is Mahavishnu, and then Garbhodakshayi Vishnu. And from whose navel comes Brahma, and then Brahma manifests the entire material world. And you may say, how is this possible? Well, it's about as possible as the Big Bang is possible. Now, not only does Garbhodakshai Vishnu manifest the material universes, but he is also present as Shirodakshai Vishnu, or the Paramatma, or the Supersoul, in the heart of every living entity. And one who is engaged in meditation can perceive him or his energy directly within oneself. He is the witness, and when people talk of witness consciousness, they are referring to the same Shirodakshai Vishnu, the Supersoul, the Paramatma, the Great Soul who is present within all of us. As Ananta Shesha, the same Balaram serves as the bed on which Garbhodakshai Vishnu lies. And in Vrindavan, he serves as the place for all Krishna's pastimes, as the Dham, Krishna, as the Vrindavan Dham. He is always eager to serve by assisting Krishna in his Leela. Balaram is known to be the embodiment of Krishna's Chit Shakti. So let's take a look at what that is. There are three things mentioned about the nature of the soul and the nature of God. That they are Sat, that is existence or and Chit is consciousness, and Ananda is bliss. So Balaram is the embodiment of Krishna's Sat Shakti, or the Sandhini Shakti. This is the Supreme Lord's existential potency by which Balaram supports the entire universe. You see, existence is very important to understand because Sat refers to many things. Sat refers to truth. Sat refers to that which is eternal. And Sat refers to existence. And these three things actually mean the same thing. In the Vedic literature, that which is eternal is considered that which is true. And that which is temporary is considered to be asat, or false, or illusory. And that is this world. This world is considered false because it is illusory. Doesn't mean it's false. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It exists, but it is illusory. It is temporary. And now, of course, with the advancements of science, we're able to understand that a little better. What do they mean by that? Asatoma sadgamaya, tamasoma jyotirgamaya. So the devotee, the yogi, wants to come to the place that is out of the ignorance of asat, or that which is temporary, or that which is false, and come to the light of that which is real, or sat. Now, Balaram is also considered to be the original guru. He represents the original guru tattva, the guru principle, and we should approach him for spiritual strength. So just as the guru we have in this world is there to guide us, but that guru is the representative of Balaram. And a guru is essential so that we may know the correct way in which to approach God. In Christianity, they have the idea that no one can approach God without Jesus. Well, the same thing has been taught for thousands of years before Jesus, and it is in that same principle that Jesus is teaching, that no one can approach God without the Guru. So, just as we have the Guru who comes before us to teach us and guide us and pull us up when we're not, following the correct path, similarly, the origin of that Guru is Balaram. He is the original Guru. And he serves Krishna in this way by guiding us. And we should approach him for spiritual strength so that we can develop the right service attitude and the mood to serve Krishna, the Guru and the devotees, the Vaishnavas. Only when we receive the blessings and mercy of Balaram will Krishna accept us, not directly. It is said that Balaram carries a plow, and with that he can cultivate. So that's the plow in his hand. He can cultivate the hearts of the devotees to make it fertile for the seed of bhakti or devotion to grow, of love of God. Right? Just as a farmer uses a plow to cultivate the land, so also the Guru makes our hearts fertile for the seed of devotion, of love of God to grow. Balaram's birthday, or the correct term is appearance day, because there is no such thing as birth or death for God, or even for us for that matter. Krishna says, never was there a time when I was born, nor you. So therefore, birthdays actually make no sense for one who understands the spiritual philosophy. So Shravan Purnima is the appearance day of Balaram, and on this day we should worship him so that he is pleased and guides us in our bhakti. So with that, let's get started. Once, Sri Balaram was eager to visit his family and friends. He mounted his chariot and traveled to Vrindavan. Now, to give you a little background in case you're coming in the middle somewhere, maybe you haven't seen this from the beginning. We've been doing a lot of episodes talking about Krishna and Balaram's childhood pastimes. But here's a little recap. When they were young, until the age of 11, they were raised in Vrindavan by Yashoda and Nanda and all the residents of Vrindavan, the gopis. And it was just the most beautiful time of their lives. But then, after all these beautiful and tender moments, this is with their father Nanda and mother Yashoda, and with their friends. After all of those beautiful pastimes, Krishna and Balaram went to Mathura on the calling of their uncle Akrura. And there they killed the King Kamsa, and after killing Kamsa, they went on to form their own kingdom in the island of Dwarka. They grew up. They were the kings. And they were powerful. They had a huge army. And they had all their family members from Mathura were there, because Krishna's birth parents were actually not the ones in Vrindavan, they were in Mathura. Krishna had been taken away from his birth parents and brought to this other town for safety. Not that he needed any safety. But all this time, years had passed, and Krishna had not come back. Balaram had not come back to Vrindavan, to the birth parents. Now, Jiva Goswami in the Harivamsha points out that the residents of Vrindavan were aggrieved that Krishna had gone to live elsewhere. So now Balaram was going there to console them. The question, of course, may arise, why did Krishna not go with Balaram to Vrindavan? And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur addresses this question, explaining that Krishna is the great ocean of pure love. His family in Dwarka thought Krishna's beloved girlfriends are famous for their pure, ecstatic love. The gopis in Vrindavan. And his parents, Nanda and Yashoda, are extremely affectionate toward him. Krishna is controlled by pure love. God, the supreme Godhead, the source of all creation, is controlled by pure love. And the love of Vrindavan residents was the most pure as you can get. So if he goes to see them, how will he ever leave them and come back to us? With this in mind, they prevented Krishna from going. As for the residents of Vrindavan, having long suffered the anxiety of separation, the cowherd men and their wives, when they saw Balaram, it was as if They'd been in a desert, starving. They had become almost lifeless. They could barely eat. They could barely drink. They could barely sleep. They had become like crazy people, all of them, all the residents of Vrindavan. Their beloved had gone. You know what it's like when you grieve when your loved ones go and you do not see them ever again? If you have a child, especially if you have a child who you never see again, how broken is your heart? When you have a lover who leaves you, how heartbroken you are. And especially if there's no closure, if there's no idea why, if there's no sense of what's going on, there's no communication, there's completely cut off. After all, they didn't have phones or things like that in those days. They were talking of 5,000 years ago. So Balaram, Krishna's brother, had come to meet them. And having suffered the anxiety of separation, the cowherd men and their wives embraced him. He then offered respects to his parents and they joyfully greeted him with prayers. His father and mother, Nanda and Yashoda, said, "O Lord of the universe, Jagadishwara." That's how they addressed him. By now, I think they were aware that this is no other than the Supreme Godhead who has incarnated, and as we have had the good fortune of raising him as our child. So they said, "O Jagadishwara, may you and your younger brother Krishna ever protect us." Saying this, they raised Balaram onto their lap, embraced him. Now, of course, if you were thinking of someone is the Supreme Godhead, you would not put him on your lap. But they couldn't keep that intellectual side alive. They were just back into their feeling of parental love. So they put Balaram on their lap, embraced him, and moistened him with tears from their eyes. Balaram then paid proper respects to all the elders, the elder cowherd men and their wives, and the younger ones all greeted him respectfully. He met them all with smiles and handshakes and so on, dealing personally with each one according to their age, degree of friendship, and family relationship. Then after resting, Balaram accepted a comfortable seat, and they all gathered around him, and with voices faltering out of love for him, these cowherds who had dedicated everything to the lotus-eyed Krishna asked about the health of their dear ones in Dwarka. That's where Krishna and Balaram were living now. And Balaram in turn asked about their welfare. The cowherd people asked, "O Rama, O Balaram, are all our relatives doing well?" They're being polite right now. And Rama, do all of you with your wives and children still remember us? It is our great fortune that the sinful Kamsa has been killed. That was the king who had tormented everyone. And Krishna and Balaram had finally gone and killed him. It is our great fortune that the sinful King Kamsa has been killed, and our dear relatives, that's Krishna's parents, Vasudev, Devaki, as well as all their relatives who had been imprisoned, all of them have been freed. It is also our good fortune that our relatives have killed and defeated their enemies and found complete security in a great fortress on the island of Dwarka. Honored to have the personal audience of Balaram, the young gopis smiled and they asked him, "Is Krishna, the darling of the city women, living happily?" You can see a touch of jealousy there, that the other women of the city get to be with him, but they're missing him. They're missing him with their life. He is their life and soul. They have no life and soul other than he is just like everything to them. They spend so many wonderful times together. Beautiful pastimes where they met in the middle of the night, where they played in the river, where they sang and danced. Where they feasted and where they loved each other. Imagine how heartbroken they were. Imagine how devastated they were that they hadn't heard from him, that he hadn't come. And one might wonder why. The truth is this, that in his absence, the gopis began, the cowherd girls, the women, began to see him everywhere. They saw him in the forests, in the trees. They kept seeing him. And the more they missed him, that love in separation became greater and greater and greater. Try and understand that we're not talking about love with some ordinary person. We're talking about love for God, love for that supreme source of all and of all creation, the source of love. And now he wanted to see that there and wanted to help them with their love and make it grow deeper and deeper and deeper. What is the extent of love? Have you ever wondered? Is romantic love the only kind of love there is? Or is there a greater love? And if that greater love exists, then what is it? What is unmotivated love? Anya abhilashita shunyam. One love that is free from trying to get something out of the other person. Whether that something be your needs being met, whether that something is safety or security or pleasure. What is pure love? Where there is no agenda. Have you ever wondered? We all seek love. We all want love. But what is real love? We do not know. We know what romantic novels have told us. We know what movies have told us. But here we're understanding the nature of pure, divine love, the source of all love, the original love. And these are the original lovers. So they're asking Balaram, does Krishna remember his family members? They're going indirectly. Does he remember his family members, especially his father and mother? Do you think he'll ever come back and even once see his mother? They're not mentioning themselves. And does the mighty armed Krishna remember the service we always did for him? Now they're coming to the point. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that the gopis would render service to Krishna by stringing flower garlands. So they'd pick flowers from the forest. He loved the forest flowers, and they'd make flower garlands out of that. They would skillfully use perfumes and construct fans and feather beds and canopies out of flower petals. By these simple acts of love, the gopis rendered the greatest service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then they said, the gopis said, for Krishna's sake we abandoned our mothers, fathers, brothers, husbands, children, and sisters, even though these family relations are very difficult to give up. And now that same Krishna has suddenly abandoned us and gone away, breaking off all affectionate ties with us. And yet, how could we not fail? How could we have failed to trust his promises? So on one hand, they're heartbroken. But on the other hand, their love has become deeper with every passing moment. By the way, I want to invite you to write any questions you might have. You might wonder, what kind of love is this? How is this possible? We're in a very intense portion of the Bhagavatam. We're in a very deeply intimate portion. And it may be a little difficult to understand. So I empathize with that. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. Wherever you are, whether you're on YouTube, or you're on Instagram, or you're on any other platform, Facebook, feel free to write and I will see your questions. And at the end of the reading, I'll take it up and try and answer them to the best of my ability. So they continue, the gopis continue. How can intelligent city women possibly trust the words of one whose heart is so unsteady and who is so ungrateful? They must believe him because he speaks so wonderfully. and also because his beautiful smiling glances aroused their lust. "Why bother talking about him, dear Gopi?" said another one. "Please talk of something else. If he passes his time without us, then we shall similarly pass ours without him." But they can't stop talking about him. They just go on and on. While speaking these words, the young cowherd women remembered Krishna's laughter, his pleasing conversations with them, his attractive glances, his style of walking, and his loving embraces. Thus they began to cry. Now Balaram had come to soothe them. He was aware of all this. Balaram is Krishna's brother. Balaram had been there the entire time when these pastimes were taking place. So he too is that Supreme Lord. He's just an expansion of Krishna. So the Supreme Lord Balaram, the attractor of all, being expert at various kinds of conciliation, consoled the gopis by relaying to them the confidential messages Krishna had sent with him. These messages deeply touched the gopis' heart. Balaram, the personality of Godhead, resided there for 2 months, and during the nights he gave his cowherd girlfriends conjugal pleasure. So he stayed there for quite a while. And during that time, he engaged with them in dancing, in playfulness, in loving them, and bringing them to them the ways that Krishna had loved them. In the company of numerous women, Balaram enjoyed in a garden by the Yamuna river. This garden was bathed in the rays of the full moon and caressed by breezes carrying the fragrance of night-blooming lotuses. The demigod, Deva, Varun, sent the divine Varuni liquor which flowed from a tree hollow and made the entire forest even more fragrant with its sweet aroma. Here's a very important point to consider. All of us want to enjoy. We want pleasure. We want to eat, drink, and be merry. And that desire for pleasure, for enjoyment, comes from our connection with God. There is nothing wrong in it. However, when we don't understand the purpose of this, when we don't understand that all pleasure is meant to be enjoyed with God, not separate from God, try and understand everything in this world, including this body, including this mind, including the other people that you meet, and including the things of the world, all belong to God. You may say, "Oh, I purchased this item. I worked hard and I bought this thing and now it's my right to enjoy it." Sure, you've been given that freedom. But in reality, is it yours? Is anything yours? In reality, everything existed before you were born and everything will exist after you die, at least the raw materials. We may take those raw materials and make with them whatever, but they existed before us and will exist after we leave this world. So who do they belong to? The raw materials all come from God and belong to God. And once we understand that even this body comes from God and belongs to God, that every heartbeat that we have is a gift from God, that every breath we take is a gift. And what are we doing in turn for God? He's not asking us to put him on a pedestal. He's not asking us that, "Oh, worship me like this and like that, and so many times a day," and so on. He's asking us to give us his heart, our heart, and he's ready to give us his heart. All he's asking for is our love. And love can only happen when you know someone. And all these pastimes that are here in the Bhagavatam are so you can get to know the beloved, that sweet, beautiful being who is the source of our creation. It is because he is the source of beauty that we seek beauty. It is because he is the source of pleasure that we seek pleasure. It is because he is the source of knowledge that we seek knowledge. It is because he is the source of all that is that we keep wanting more and more and more and more and wanting to expand. So here was Balaram enjoying with the gopis. And why do they come here to show us these things? Because they're inviting us. They're saying, come back home. This is what we do back home, back in the spiritual world, where there is no birth, no death, no old age, no disease. Why? Because you don't have a material body anymore. You have a spiritual body. A spiritual body is not subject to these things. It is not subject to karma. It is not subject to any of this stuff. But to do that, we have to purify the anarthas, the impurities that are within us. What are those impurities? They are the very things that make us think we are separate from God. That we are the enjoyer. That we are the one to whom everything belongs. That this is I, me, and mine. That is the impurity. And when we take that out of our heart and we understand that everything comes from God, belongs to God, and is for the pleasure of God, then we can begin to enjoy with God. Just as we take our food and we offer it to God, and then we enjoy that food afterwards. Simple, it's not a big deal. And it's an acknowledgement. It's an honoring. So here the gopis are enjoying with Balaram. And we'll read a little further about that. The wind carried the fragrance of that sweet liquor to Balaram, and when he smelled it, he went to the tree where Varuni had been kept by the Deva, the demigod Varun. And when he went there and he brought it for his female companions, and together they all drank. At that time, kettle drums resounded in the sky. The Gandharvas are alien beings who are gifted with tremendous voices. They're not alien beings by the Hollywood standard, please. They're extremely beautiful, far more beautiful than people on earth. They have incredible talent for music and dance. So the Gandharvas joyfully rained down flowers as they sang and as they danced. They showered flowers upon Krishna and Balaram and all of the gopis. And the great sages praised Balaram's heroic deeds. Now, are these just stories? No, these are recorded histories by great sages. Sages are enlightened beings, wise beings from ancient times. They recorded this so that we could relish in these pastimes, so that we may understand the purpose of human life is to be able to connect with God, to love God. And the only way you're going to love someone is when you get to know about them. So as the Gandharvas sang his glories, Balaram enjoyed within the brilliant circle of young women. As his deeds were sung, Balaram wandered as if inebriated among the various forests with his girlfriends. His eyes rolled from the effects of the liquor. Intoxicated with joy, Balaram wore flower garlands, including those made from the famous Vaijayanti flowers. He wore a single earring, and beads of perspiration decorated his smiling lotus face. He then summoned the Yamuna river so that he could play in her waters. Now he summoned her, meaning the river is somewhere else, and he summoned the river to come to him. As a normal, ordinary human being, if you summon the river to come to you, the river is not going to come to you. But this is Balaram, the Supreme Godhead, the brother of Krishna, who is no different than Krishna and as powerful as Krishna. So Varun, the Yamuna river, couldn't understand how he could be commanding her. She thought he's drunk, so she disregarded his command. This angered Balaram, and he began dragging river Yamuna with the tip of his plow. At that point, the river personified, Yamuna personified, came and approached him. And he said to her, O sinful one, disrespecting me, you do not come when I call, but rather move only by your own whim. Therefore, with the tip of my plow, I shall bring you here in 100 streams. So he divided the river into 100 streams. Thus scolded by the Supreme Lord, the frightened river Yamuna came and fell at the feet of Sri Balaram. Trembling, she spoke to him the following words. Ram, Ram, Balaram, O mighty armed one, I know nothing of your prowess. With a single portion of yourself, you hold up the earth, O Lord of the universe. My Lord, please release me. I didn't understand your position as the Supreme Godhead, but now I have surrendered unto you, and you are always kind to your devotees. Then Balaram released the Yamuna and entered the river's water with his female companions. Balaram played in the water to his full satisfaction along with the gopis. And then he came out. When he came out of the water, goddess Kanti or Lakshmi presented him with various things. She had been sent by Varuna, and goddess Lakshmi presented him with a garland of unfading lotuses and a pair of garments colored blue like the ocean. She said, please accept as divine ornaments for your ears this single gold earring studded with diamonds and this primeval lotus called Padma. Kindly accept them. Balaram dressed himself in the blue garments and put on the gold necklace. Anointed with fragrances and beautifully adorned, he appeared resplendent. Even today, one can see how the Yamuna flows through the many channels created when it was dragged by the unlimitedly powerful Balaram. This is back in India we're talking about. Thus she demonstrates his prowess. All the nights passed like a single night. Balaram was there for 2 months. All of those nights just passed in a flurry. Of course, during the day he was with the others, with the cowherd boys and with the men and with the family and with all of that. But at night he was with the cowherd women. Balaram, his mind enchanted by the exquisite charm and beauty of Vrindavan's young ladies, enjoyed his time in Vraja. So with that, we end this particular chapter and we get to understand the depth of one's relationship, just a glance into the depth of one's relationship with the divine. It is the most mystical, it is the most powerful, it is the most beautiful of all relationships. I invite you to explore further. I invite you to understand it more deeply, because there is nothing in comparison. If you've read any poetry describing love of this at this level, for example, if you read the work of Rumi or Hafiz, or if you read the Bhagavatam, or if you read any of these books here, you would understand that this is the ultimate peak, pinnacle of love. All right, so I'm waiting to see if there's any questions. So far, I don't see any. Now, for those of you that will be joining at a later time or watching this at a later time, if you would like to ask your questions in the comments, I'd be happy to answer them there as well. Remember that all the episodes are there in YouTube under Spiritual Wisdom Academy, or you can look for my name, Rohit Juneja. Likewise, I don't know if you'll find it with Spiritual Wisdom Academy. Sometimes you can, but otherwise at Rohit Juneja, you'll definitely find me on YouTube. I have many episodes on Instagram as well, so you can look there. But if you want the entire Bhagavatam and the entire Bhagavad Gita, I've got it on YouTube. And there you'll find almost 20 episodes of the Gita that covers the entire Bhagavad Gita. And then 116, this is the 116th episode of the Bhagavatam, each of them being about an hour long. So you got your work cut out for you if you want to catch up, and I'm so grateful for you being here. Thank you. Is there anyone who's got any last words, any comments? Thank you for being here, Shashi. And all right. Thank you. I shall see you next week. We're here every Tuesday at 6 o'clock Pacific time, 9 o'clock Eastern. And in India, it's 7:30 a.m. on Wednesdays. So for the US, it's Tuesday evening. In India, it's Wednesday morning, 7:30 a.m. All right, wish you a wonderful night. Take care. I'll see you next week.